Welcome to the Over the Hump Podcast, your gateway to the world of the iconic Brahman breed of cattle. At BRC Ranch, our passion for Brahman cattle runs deep. Join us as we delve into the heart of this extraordinary breed, unveiling its rich history, exploring industry trends, and sharing captivating stories that define the American Brahman. BRC Ranch stands as the pinnacle of Brahman excellence in America, boasting a decade-long legacy of champions and housing the finest Brahman bulls worldwide. It's not just about cattle, it's about a legacy that reverberates across ranches and hearts. Brought to you by BRC Ranch, where the Brahman legacy thrives and stories are woven into the very fabric of ranching. This is Over the Hump. And now your hosts, Brendan Cottrell, Rachel Cottrell, and Keaton Dodd.
We'd like to welcome everybody back to another episode of the Over the Hump podcast. And I'm Keaton Dodd. And today I have the great privilege of getting to interview two people that I would consider not only friends of the Brahman breed, but just personal friends of myself, Joe and Lana Henskins. And so if y'all would, before we get into even talking just Brahman cattle, would each one of y'all take a little bit of time to kind of tell us about your background, a little bit about yourself, and kind of what got you to where y'all are today?
This is Lana Henskins. So I've always had a cattle background. My dad has preconditioned cattle for pretty much all of my life growing up, and he was an otter buyer. So we were always around cattle, probably since I was in diapers. And when I was about, 15 or so, my dad purchased our first registered Brahma, and the rest is kind of history. You know, the halter breaking side of things and our fitting service started when I was about 15. I was doing it on the side just to kind of have extra money through high school. And then when Joe and I met, it kind of just turned itself into a business that it is today. So that's pretty much where my cattle background started. I'll let Joe kind of give you a little bit about his cattle background as well.
Perfect, Joe.
Thank you for y'all inviting us for this podcast. And so my background is, a lot of my family has been in farming and ranching, or mostly farming in the rice industry here in South Louisiana. And my dad kind of took a different path, went to the oil field with the conditions farming at that time. And then he and his brothers kind of got in just as a hobby and back into buying cattle because all their uncles and great uncles had them. And then probably in the 80s, that's when they started dabbling with Simmental and Cimbras, when that was kind of getting hot. And that mostly kind of evolved a little bit until I was in college, because all I wanted to do was raise cows and be involved in agriculture. During college, I started expanding and getting bigger with my dad, and then kind of just splitting off doing we still operate together a lot of our commercial cows, and then on our registered side, Lana and I, just as we met during college, grew that as well as our fitting and halter breaking service. So we kind of started it from the ground up, so to say.
Yeah, I guess we skipped a few details for those that listening that don't know. Y'all are married, and I guess to go backwards a little bit. So you said you met in college, and so how'd y'all meet, and how'd all this come together?
One of the first times, so her dad was buying country cattle, and we would go and sell calves in the fall to him. So we kind of saw each other there. And then later on, so I have an older brother that's 10 years older than me. And at that time, his daughter was, I guess, around 2 or 3 years old, maybe. And we were at a rodeo, and Lana walked by and seen me with her family. She was there with her sister and all. And I was holding this little girl. So she thought I'd had a kid. So she didn't know how to take that, because she was like, I want to talk to you, but I didn't know how to take that, if you had a kid or not. So after that is kind of when we started talking, and everything just kind of started from there.
And where'd y'all go to school at?
I had an animal science degree from University of Louisiana at Lafayette, so I was the last class of agriculture to graduate from there before they had budget cuts and they cut it out.
I didn't realize they cut the ag program out. That's news to me. That's a bummer. Atlanta, where did you end up going to school?
So I went to McNeese State University in Lake Charles, and I graduated with an animal science degree as well.
Perfect. And so early career, I guess directly, I know you don't just immediately go into having y'all spit in service. What kind of filled in the gaps between y'all graduating college, getting married, and then ultimately becoming kind of what y'all are now?
I guess a lot of things filled in those gaps. Joe and I both obviously, we had jobs and things to kind of make ends meet as we were building our fitting service. While I was in college, I actually worked for V Cross Ranch for a few winters and a few summers, and I would actually help my dad back at Circle T and halter break calves and do different things there. And then once I graduated college, I went straight into working for Purina as a livestock product specialist. And I worked for Purina for about 5 years and gained a lot of knowledge. And then that's kind of when things really ramped up for the cattle service side of things. We've always did things on the side. We've had commercial cows since we first met, that we raised up. And we do a lot of AI work for a lot of local people. And, we've always done something involved with cattle for pretty much our whole life until we met. And then it just, two's better than one. So we just kind of ramped up things from there.
Hard to argue with that. Joe, have you always worked for yourself or for y'all, I guess?
For the most part, yeah, I've ever since in college I started. My brother and I had like a little fencing business, and then I ended up buying him out in 2021, and we just kind of expanded the fencing a little bit, and then for sure on the cattle side we've expanded, as far as our services and our actual cattle.
Yeah, well, there's many irons in the fire that both of y'all have. How do y'all even manage time between the fitting service, your own personal cattle, the fencing company? That sure seems like a lot to balance.
Absolutely, we've been blessed to have some really good people come along to work for us, and we've got a one main guy that's probably been with us for 12 years. I think we were figuring the other day for our fencing side, and he's kind of, when we were just getting started, he doesn't like to do anything with cows or like halter breaking cows. He does anything with tractors and all that. But when we were first getting started, we really couldn't afford to pay anybody else. So it was just he and I in Atlanta pretty much, and he would stay and try to help us feed and halter break till sometimes we'd stay in the barn until 10 o'clock at night trying to make it all happen. And then we were obviously able to get kind of a barn manager and had a few good ones along the way. And plus, we've got a couple Hispanic workers that have been really good to us.
Yeah, that's the thing is people hear about the dreams and the goals and they don't realize how many outside people were involved to get y'all where you're going. But I guess this is the point to get into kind of what we've all been wanting to talk about, J&L Cattle Services. So if y'all would just kind of get into the very beginning of it, I know that everything has to start somewhere. Who was y'all's first client? Kind of how did that all line out?
So when Joe and I first met, we were obviously both in college, and he was living at a little place that had, which is where we still are today, that had a barn and a small pen. And I said, Joe, I've always take some cattle here and there for a few people. How about instead of having everything go on at my dad's place, let's just try to start taking some of those here. And our very first client, as far as under J&L, was a very good friend of ours, which is a neighbor, Mr. Terry Fall with Fall Cattle Company, and they raise purebred Brangus. And then from there, our next client I would say would be probably Carson Watkins and Stuart Watkins. And then we just kind of kept building up from there. We took some cattle for Jason Smith. We took a lot of Herefords. We pretty much started, we went on Facebook and we started blasting it on Facebook, and then it just kind of grew up from there. But more or less, it was word of mouth of people that we showed cattle with growing up, and they just, were like, hey, let's give them a try. And that's pretty much where we started. And it's been 10 years that we've been in the halter breaking slash fitting side of things.
Just for those that aren't familiar with the whole process of it, when you say fitting service, I know what that means, but what does that mean that those people are getting from y'all? What is y'all's fitting service include?
On the fitting side of things, we mainly deal with only Brahma cattle. And from the fitting, it basically starts from halter breaking to prepping those animals for the show, whether it's just, feeding them for 30 days before their first show, to training them, washing them every day, getting their hair coat the proper way, getting everything pretty much right, eliminating the ringworms or clipping heads or trimming feet, all those sorts of things is where the fitting side falls in here at home. And then taking those animals and exhibiting them on the road at shows, from Texas to Florida to Georgia to everywhere in between in the southern states.
Yeah, that led me into my next question. So, would y'all have a rough idea, and I know this would be hard to even know the answer to, but a rough idea how many miles that y'all travel and how many shows y'all attend in a year?
Well, we did sit down a few days ago and we figured out that we had attended around 22 or 23 open shows between 2000 and, well, when the show season started in 2024 to today in 2000 and what we're in
25.
April of 25. So I don't know how many miles, Keaton. I think I would be lying on that, but I can tell you it was 22 shows strung out from all over the southern states. Now, we also have our niece that does junior shows, and we had a nephew that attended junior shows, so we did go to our fair share of those as well. But 22 open shows for the show year of 2025.
Geez, and I guess, like, what would be the furthest one? Tennessee, maybe, or do y'all go to Florida?
We don't really travel much to Florida. I'm not saying we never will. It's just we feel like it's just harder on the cattle. But our furthest one, I would say, would probably have been either Perry, Georgia, or
Tennessee, probably. It's
Tennessee.
Tennessee State Fair, yeah.
Yes, Tennessee State Fair. Yes.
I would assume Tennessee would have to be up there. Well, I judged that show this year, and y'all had a great set of cattle and it looked fresh, but I just can't imagine because they basically y'all roll up there, hold over for a day, show the next day, and turn around and drive right back. That would just seems like a heck of a process.
It was. Yes, sir, it was.
Is it usually just y'all two that go to shows? I know that y'all have had Spanky around or different people, but is it mainly day to day just y'all two?
Not necessarily. We do have the guy that kind of, I guess we'd say, like our herdsman, Lane Johnson. He pretty much attends every show with us. We tried to stick with hauling no more than 20 to a show, and with having that many, we understand that it takes more than just two people to get everything done right. And at the end of the day, the showing side of things is a side for us to still talk and communicate with customers, and so we don't want to engulf all of our time just working. So we always try to bring at least two people with us. Lane Johnson's the main one, and Harley Doucette has traveled a bunch with us. Dakota Smith traveled with us a little bit, more or less to drive. He helped a bunch, but he did a lot of the driving. And then my sister Leah Thibodeau, she's helped us a bunch as well. So those people have probably been the four people this year that have helped us out quite a bit.
I gotcha. Well, this is personal opinion, but I think it's probably shared by a large portion of the Brahmin community. But y'all have been as successful or more successful than just about any custom fitter in the Brahmin deal right now. But what animal or maybe point in y'all's career was kind of y'all's big break or the turning point where y'all thought, man, we really could do this and make a living doing this?
Oh, that's a good question. I really think the Pole Foundation bull is kind of the bull that really cranked it up for us, that made us really, really want to push hard in it. It was always, the fitting service was always something to help, I guess, break the cost for us exhibiting our own cattle. But when we realize, what we can do and what we can take something and make it so big, I would say the Pole Foundation bull is really the one that kind of made us like, this is what we want to stick in, and we really want to move forward with this. We've had a lot of good cattle from day one, but I think when that bull came onto our show string, we really said, this is where we want to go.
Definitely, I would think that that would be one of y'all's more notable animals, or at least most talked about that y'all have exhibited. Another bull that's been really popular, and I was just going to kind of get the story on because I'm not sure. Did y'all own, and show, or just show the Cold Smoke bull?
So the Pulled Smoke Bull, we raised him and showed him, and then we sold him.
So, what's the full story on that bull, Joe?
So that is a good story, and I'm glad you brought that up because I guess we try to explain it to some people that ask. And so, if you look at that bull, his prefix is MCC, which is Mowater Cattle, and Mowater is a little town about about 20 miles west of us. A lot of my family is from, and my cousin had a gray cow herd that kind of goes back to a lot of Hudgens breeding, and he's busy getting older, and he didn't really want to have to deal with it. So he came up to Landon and I, and he's like, wanted to make a deal with us for that cow herd. So we made the deal, and Landon and I were like, we got to do something different. Like these cows they're on their own. They're going to calve on their own. They're great milkers, perfect udders. They do what a cow's supposed to do in our eyes. And so we're like, we need to do something a little different. And he was friends with the Schneiders at Schneider Brahmins. So we went over there because we were kind of in the San Antonio area. So we went there and we seen the Pole Smoke Bull. We're like, a lot of those cows, Pole Negro, I'm sorry, Pole Negro Bull. And we're like, well, a lot of those cows don't have a whole lot of pigment, and this bull is polled. Maybe we just try this out, and something totally different than he's ever done with those cows. And that was how that bull was created.
So he's pulled Negro out of one of your cousin's cows. And what was the point where y'all are like, this bull's pretty special? Because I mean, that semen brings good money, or at least it did, and that bull was very successful. But I guess at what point were you like, man, this bull, we need to halter break him, get him to show barn, see what he can do?
We seen him as I guess he was around like 3 or 4 months old. We were out there just checking cows, and Landon and I were like, man, we need to pull this bull up because where they're at's in a lot of rice fields. And when you get closer into like the summer, getting into the fall, the mosquitoes are just unbelievable there. Like only a Brahmin can live, literally. So we're like, man, we need to pull this bull up and give him a shot because out here, he's gonna have to really rough it. So we pulled him up, and we actually had a red bull at the same time. They were like born within 30 days of each other, called Skip, that we also raised. So we kind of raised those two bulls together, and it's just I don't know, it was a pretty neat deal for us. To kind of, I guess, that helped put us on the map as far as our breeding program.
You just brought up a name that means a lot to me, and a lot of people might have forgot about that bull. Kind of one of the sadder stories, but let's tell a story on Skip because I always loved that bull so much.
So Skip, it's really a good story. Same like the smoke bull. So Joe and I had bought our first Brahma cow, CT Lady Rose Rhino, from my dad, and she was a Pasco daughter off of 8/9 and goes back to 380.
Well, you own half her mother, so you.
I own half her mother, and then Joe and I ended up buying out the cow from my dad because my partner was my dad on that cow, and so this calf obviously was a partnership calf. So we did a lot of halter breaking for Carson and Stewart, and we ended up trading Maximus semen for some halter breaking, and we AI'd that rose cow, and the natural calf that came off was Skip. And Skip had a very special look to him, just like the smoke bull. They were just different, and it was that was probably our first set of calves that we were able to say, hey, this is all of ours. We came up with the matings, and those two bulls together kind of did put us on the map, I would say, and on our breeding program. But Skip was very special to me as he was one of the first ones that Joe and I owned together. And he was very successful for us in the show ring. And I guess it was 2000 and what year when we lost him?
21.
He was at our property, which is like a half a mile from our house, and he would always lay over. And if you know Skip, he had a big old belly, big Springer rib, and he laid down, and he just laid in a spot that he couldn't get up, and he unfortunately passed on us. And he was definitely the next upcoming thing that we were really, really proud of. But at the end of the day, we still had Smoke, and we really liked Smoke, and Smoke helped our breeding program and kind of put our name on the map. And it is sad that Skip's not with us today, but Smoke did definitely come in and do his job.
Helped carry some of the load. But yeah, I always thought that bull was in position to make a big impact on the red cattle, and so it's unfortunate, but you'll never know what he could have been. But do y'all have any sibs or anything related to him coming down the pipe?
So we do have 2 full sibs. Well, we have 1 full sib left off of him, and we still have Skip's mother. And so we're going to work on trying to make that mating here pretty soon. We had a bull called Jesse James. That would actually be about a quarter.
His mother was a full sister to Skip.
His mother was a full sister to Skip. We actually just sold Jesse James here in Houston to Merino Ranches. And Jesse James was related to Skip, but we're going to try to make that mating here in the next probably couple years again. So
That makes sense. I mean, like I said, Skip, at the time, I didn't know if there was a Red Bull as good as him, so I think still would be incredibly relevant right now. Going in a slightly different direction, still cattle related, but what remains of the Cimbra / Simmental cattle, Joe? Are y'all still pushing that pretty heavy?
So like the last few years, we obviously concentrated a lot on our Brahmin side, but here, I guess maybe the last 2 years, we kind of really started concentrating a little more and putting a little more emphasis, spending more time on our Cimbra side. So we have a group of spring calves that are born right now that we think's really good, and we're gonna dabble in a little more with them, and probably a little bit in the Simmental side as well, because we use a lot of Sim Angus bulls and Simmental bulls on our commercial cow herd, which a lot of our commercial cow herd will go back to being Sim influenced, like Cimbra, F1 Cimbra cows, but we also have a lot of F1 Brayford and Brangus type cattle, as far as our commercial side.
I got you. And this was a question actually that Rachel had written, but are you still on the board for the Simmental Association?
Yeah, so in January, our terms are 3 years, and you can run 2 terms. And in January, I just began my second term, so this will be my 4th year on the ASA, American Simmental Association Board of Trustees. And it's funny you bring that up because I actually fly out at 5 in the morning for our spring meetings in Bozeman, Montana. So I'm looking forward to that.
That sounds like a lot of fun. Tell my buddies John DeClerc and Victor Guerra I said hello.
Will do. I'll definitely see them there.
Not to be political or talk really about breed association stuff too much, but being kind of involved in ASA and ABBA, what do you think are kind of some similarities and maybe some differences you see that they're doing there at Simmental that we could adopt at Brahman that would be beneficial?
I don't stay heavily involved with the ABBA just because the ASA takes a lot of our time and with everything else we have going on. But I like the DNA portion of what they're doing, and it's in the Simmental side. When I first got on the board, I was like, I think everything needs to be DNA'd. So your performance-oriented guys out west and in the Midwest, and they're all already doing DNA on every single calf that's born. So they're great, and they're very, very passionate about the data. But they did bring up a valid point as far as getting these numbers, especially on the commercial side, or these big performance breeders. I think like having the walking sires and your donor and AI sires and like your ET calves all require DNA on that. That way you don't lose those numbers on those big ranches. And I think that's the only thing. Correct me if I'm wrong. Doesn't the ABBA? I think they're requiring every single calf to be DNA that's registered.
Yeah, eventually it's going to get to that. Right now, it's everything except for a natural calving cow, then those don't have to be DNA'd yet, but it's going to get to that point.
Yeah, and I think the industry is moving toward that. And I've learned a lot being on the ASA board. It's a sharp learning curve, even for. I mean, obviously, I'm one of the youngest ones on the board, but even for some of the older guys, not just them in the DNA, but just all the behind the scenes of what makes a breed association go. And I think it's really tough on breed associations right now. I mean, it always has been, but if you don't keep those commercial guys, if you don't keep them in mind and keep them at the forefront, it's going to be very tough for any breed association to survive here pretty soon. I truly believe that.
I agree too. I mean, at the end of the day, if you can't base it back to the commercial world, there is really no sustainability in a breed association. But like you're talking about DNA, it's just a necessary evil at this point. It can be a headache at times coordinating all that, but it's going to become just where it's a mandatory necessity, I think. So, Lana, back to you. I know that you are on the board for the Brahman Foundation. When did that start, and kind of what do you see in that program that kind of drew you towards the Brahman Foundation?
Yes, so I think I was asked to be on the board and sometime around February, give or take. We were really busy with our show season, so I may be off about by a month or so. But it was a big honor. I really believe in the Brahman Foundation as far as supporting our youth, and it's really cool to see all what they do for the youth. And I feel that they do a big part as far as supporting these kids when it comes to not just the show ring, but having these very very educational trips to all of these universities or forums and different things like that. And I was super happy to be able to become a part of that, as I think growing up on my end, we were very fortunate to have a lot of experience around cattle, from sellborns to feed yards to slaughterhouses to everything. And I feel like in today's world there's not many kids that have that opportunity. And so I think the Brahman Foundation brings that to the table for kids to see those things. And they actually support them, with different payouts, so to say, at the All American, and they award different people throughout the year that I think is really really special. So I really believe in the Brahma Foundation. I think it's a big part of the AJBA and ABBA. And we actually have our 10th year anniversary coming up in July. I think we're going to do it at the All American. So we look forward to that. Benton England and I are actually coordinating the event for that. So that would be really, really fun.
Brahman beef is the next big thing in the meat industry. Known for its great flavor along with heart-healthy benefits, Brahman beef is taking the country by storm. Brahman Country Beef features great-tasting, heart-healthy beef raised by BRC Ranch. We ship nationwide, with everything from premium steaks to briskets, ground beef, and even hard-to-find cuts like tri-tip, picanha, oxtails, and the elusive Brahman hump. Visit BrahmanCountryBeef.com and start your order today.
So, and you kind of went into it just a little bit, Lana, but what exactly does the Brahman Foundation do? I know there's listeners here that probably won't know.
So I have not did a bunch of research as far as all of it, and Lana Joe will probably sit here and say everything for me. But I'll tell you a little bit of what I know, which is allowing kids to go on these field trips to these major universities or these ranches and giving them the opportunity to get an education and learn about different things from different states. That's a big part of it. The Brahma Foundation also gives out lots of scholarships, and I don't even know what the number is, to help these kids that want to go on and, I guess, continue their education in college. The Brahma Foundation also pays out premium checks for kids, I think the top two in the showmanship classes, or maybe the division winners at the All American. And so those are the three main things that I know of, as well as they recognize kids and donors throughout the year for their hard work and dedication and being good people throughout, I guess, their show career, and just overall good kids and good adults. And we had actually, I think, received one of the awards with Josh Duhon and Isaac and
The Animo
the Animo Award, and that was probably in
2021 when the international show was in Waco.
Yes. And so it was an honor to receive that, and that's kind of all built in through the Brahman Foundation. So it's always been close to my heart, and it was such an honor to be able to be asked to be part of it.
It is really cool. Like I said, the organization, for those that don't know, is tremendous as far as giving back to the kids. And when it was in Wharton, they came by the ranch, and I got the opportunity to visit with all of them. And I do think that the educational side of it, even as much money as they give away, I think the educational side of it's the coolest part. Kicking in a different direction. Here's a chance for shameless plug by both of y'all to talk about J&L Cattle Services, and like we talked about, kind of what y'all offer. But are y'all openly taking in new customers right now? And if I was a new customer, how could I go about getting cattle in y'all's barn?
So right now we are full. We have been very blessed and very fortunate to have consistent repeat customers, and we're full. We typically book, I guess, a year in advance, and we've been just super blessed. And I didn't even think I would ever say this, but yes, we're full. And I always told Joe we do not like to turn down business, but right now our barn is loaded down. But as far as how to get on our list is super simple. Give us a call. We talk about everything that we do and all of what we offer. Facebook, you can message us on Facebook, follow our Facebook page, and we'll put you on the list. And then as soon as we have cattle that are pulled off of our show string, then we start calling down the list. And like I mentioned earlier, we try not to take more than 20 to 25 head to a show, as we feel that anything over that, just a little bit too much for us to handle. And we want our customers to be treated right and the cattle to be treated the way that they need to. And we feel very comfortable with that 20 to 25 number. So that's kind of the reason why we fill up fast. But if anyone is interested, just give us a call, message us on Facebook. We'd be more than happy to talk. Now, on the halter breaking side, we usually fill up about 2 or 3 months in advance, but we're booking clients right now for July and August, and they can message us on Facebook or give us a call, and we'll put you down on the books for that as well.
Well, I really appreciate you saying that, because you could take more cattle and you could haul more cattle to shows, but you'd be doing just a lower quality job getting them all managed. And so having customer first mindset very sure something that I can appreciate. Now, you talked about halter breaking specifically, and if you don't know, that's fine too. But how many head do y'all think y'all break a year?
I would say about 200 head a year. We were hanging out with my sister and brother-in-law yesterday afternoon after finish up feeding, and I said, we have an awful lot of cattle at the house. I think I should count just to see how many we have. And we counted up 83 head. Now, that's not everything that we're halter breaking. I'd say that we probably have about 35 in the barn, or 40 that we're halter breaking. But I would say about 200, maybe a little bit over 200 a year. We could do more, but when we're in the show season, we really slim down the numbers because, we want those cattle to be taken care of and broke correctly. So when we're not home, we don't want just cattle sitting around, without being halter broke. So we could definitely expand the number. We just choose not to, especially during the show season.
I respect that a bunch. The quality of the work, I would assume, is much higher because y'all keep a manageable amount of animals on hand. That's crazy though. 200 head's a lot of cattle to break. I'm impressed. I guess kind of as we start wrapping up, and we've still got plenty of time, but the question that I wanted to get to that I think is important to, we've seen kind of all the success that's taken place to get J&L to where it is now, but what do y'all see as the future? At least what are y'all striving for with J&L Cattle Services going forward?
Well, I guess I'll answer the first part and then I'll let Joe chime in. We're really trying to focus on providing a unique top quality service for our customers, and a lot of our customers are new and just getting into the breed, and our goal is to make those brands successful. And whether they choose to move on and to have their own show string for their own ranch or to stick with us for the rest of their time in the Brahma business, we just want to be able to get those breeds, those brands recognized at a level that maybe they couldn't have accomplished on their own. And so our goal is to continue taking people, and I'll use them as an example, like 79 Cattle Company, and just making their brand worldwide with our services. And I guess on top of that, we also want to try to continue breeding our own cattle and staying friends and in relationships and those sorts of things with all of our customers, but trying to move our brand to where it can be recognizable as well. But for sure, our number one priority and our number one goal is to continue taking our customers' brand to a level that they didn't think that they can accomplish, and just making their, hopefully their goals and dreams come true as well.
Fair enough. So just to kind of expand on that question, and I kind of have an idea, but what is winning for you guys? Is that a repeat customer, or is that grand champion at a show?
We both grew up in a background with cattle, and banners and backdrops mean a lot to both of us. But we always tell our customers that at the end of the day, if we're able to sell cattle in countries or genetics in countries and to different people, and those people are satisfied, and then your prefix is put in paperwork in total different countries, that's winning. You have to be able to sell cattle and create a customer base to stay afloat and to stay successful. And the banners and the backdrops mean a lot, but that's the biggest thing that we try to tell our customers. At the end of the day, it's to be able to have good quality, good sound, fertile animals that continue to make an impact in other people's herds as well as yours. You have something to add on to that, Joe?
The number one thing, it's, I guess, as far as customers, every customer has a little bit different of an outlook or an expectation. And at the end of the day, like Lana said, they want their brand to be known, and we're trying to do our best to grow their brand, and they can go in whichever direction that they perceive that they want to go. And we just do our best to provide the service and help them along the way. And I think it's the good Lord has blessed us with some good customers, and we're definitely excited about it.
Y'all have had some fantastic customers, and the results, obviously, I would think your customers would say that they've had a fantastic family to help custom fit their products. But I liked what you said there, Lana, about banners and the buckles and all that are cool. But basically, having a successful business is ultimately winning at the end of the day. Basically, in a roundabout way, is kind of what you're getting at, and I couldn't agree more. Is there anything that I missed that y'all had kind of in your mind to talk about that we haven't got to at this point?
I think we've pretty much covered everything. I always tell our friends or our customers that do business with us or think about doing future business with us is that we're cow people all the way around, from when we were born to where we are today, and we see the true picture behind it. We're not just show ring oriented and show ring mindset. We've got a really strong background on the commercial side, production side. And so Joe and I both look out for all of our customers and our friends and family, not only for the show ring, but for all the other sides of the cow business. And so we want, I guess, everyone to be known that when they do business with us or they talk to us, we come from a very strong cattle background, not just in the show ring, and not just Brahma cattle, from commercial cattle to Simmental, Simbra, and all those sorts of things. So
That's kind of the thing that I've admired the most about both y'all is I'd imagine that y'all would make really good help doing day work. Y'all could work cows, AI cows, halter break, get it done at the show. I could even imagine y'all would do a good job judging a show. And so uh, like you said, y'all are just good cattle people and kind of know all facets of the industry. I guess at this point, this is where we move into our last two questions, and I want each one of y'all to answer each one of these separately. But the first one is, what is your pet peeve in Brahman today? And so I want to answer from each of y'all if you could.
And I guess this is, I guess, for the Brahman breed and just in life in general, it's okay to disagree. If you look at the association and the members, I always think about that. Like when I leave to go tomorrow, my dad always told me you have to stand for something or you fall for anything. And I mean, just because you and I might disagree on a topic doesn't mean we have to be enemies. And I think in today's world, social media, people are just at each other's throat and just they're just jumping from one fence to the other to whatever is cool today, not cool tomorrow, this type of deal. And it's like you just got to be consistent. You got to be honest, hardworking, and it's okay to disagree with someone. You can still be friends about it.
I agree. It's very bipartisan.
And I would say just about the same thing Joe pretty much, hit the nail on the head is that, we can agree to disagree. And we all have, at the end of the day, we're all people and we're in it for the same thing, or at least hope everyone is. And we just need to learn to get along and not become enemies over something so simple as far as a show ring decision or something like that. That's way beyond what we're here to do on this earth. And I would say that's probably my biggest pet peeve is for everyone to learn to agree to disagree.
I like that. And I, as a third party here, can absolutely verify that y'all are speaking the truth there and mean it when you say it. Because y'all go to more shows than just about anybody. And I don't think I've ever seen y'all get pissed off about a judge or create a confrontation. So I guess that's something that I'd admired. Whether you're last or first, it seems like y'all win and lose with humility and class. And so I really appreciate that. And this one maybe is easier, but for some people is even harder. So you'll get to thinking, what is your favorite? Actually, I want y'all to answer this in two parts. What's the favorite animal y'all have ever shown? And what's your favorite Brahmin of all time?
I kind of know the favorite animal that we have ever shown. And I think Joe could probably agree with this. I mean, wouldn't you say foundation?
Would it be the same for both of y'all?
I would. I mean, Joe's looking at me like maybe, maybe not.
Well, for me, I would think definitely the foundation bull, just because of the whole story behind it. Of just goes back to that customer sentenced that bull to just gentle him up so he'll be able to handle him and easier for him to handle. Not even he wasn't even really planning on showing that bull, and then look at what happened, and that's probably made a lifelong friend for us and almost like a father figure, Mr. John Parker, with that bull. So I mean, to me, it's about the animal, but it's about the people at the end of the day.
Well, that definitely would be my answer too. Is whole foundation is probably one of my favorite animals that we've ever shown.
Well, not to stop where we're at, but I guess we didn't really fully go into that bull, but that's kind of a cool story before we get off. So that bull was never intended to be a show bull?
That is correct. So John Parker had contacted us. There was a guy in Mississippi, and I feel really bad because I cannot remember the guy's name.
Hundo Avila. Yeah.
Avila Farms. And he had gave Mr. John Parker our contact because John had this bull that he purchased from Mr. Carlos Guerra, and he really liked the bull, but he wanted to get the bull to where he can touch him and pet on him in the pasture. And Mr. John, he has cattle and he's been with cattle his whole life, but he never really understood the show side, and he was learning. And Mr. Guerra's provided a lot of cattle for him, and one of those calves was Pole Foundation. And long story short, John came to our house, or John called me and said, "Hey, I have a bull." I said, "Bring him on. We'll halt to break him." He came to our house and we seen this bull, and I said, "He looks pretty good." And he's like, "Hey, he's homozygous polled. He's a red bull," and he was on and on and on. And I'm like, "He looks really good. I like him a lot." And in about 2 months being on the halter, I called John and I said, "John, I went to a show last month, and in this age group that this bull's in, I think this bull could really be competitive. And he said, well, I've never once thought that this bull would be a show bull. Heck, let's just take him to the show and see what happens. And Pole Foundation really didn't like for his head to be touched with. And so most of his show career, he was shown on a rope halter. And so we were like, okay, well, let's just kind of play this, I guess.
Well, to go back
Pretty
a little
safe.
bit, when we got the bull, he was 15 months old.
That's right, yes.
So
The bull was really
it wasn't like
old.
he was a weanling. We were just getting started, you know.
Yes, so when we took him to his first show, it was actually kickoff, I think,
Yeah.
right? We took him to kickoff, and we did not place well. He kind of fought the halter, and it was not what we were expecting. And I said, well, you know what? Let's just keep trying. He's different. He's red. He's homozygous polled, and he's unique. And I said, at the end of the day, people look at this bull, and Mr. John could at least sell semen. And then gradually from there, he just became a little bit easier and easier to mess with his head and to show. And, you know, the rest is history. But John originally had bought that bull just to be somewhat of a pet. And we kind of said, hey, I think let's give him a try. I think he could compete. And then he just kind of, his first division win was East Texas State Fair, I think. And then he kind of went on from there. So,
Yeah, and have to be, off the top of my head, that have to be the most winning polled bull of probably maybe history. I mean, I don't know. Y'all would probably have a better idea, but I would think it's
that's a Vicky question, but I think you are correct. We did add it up at one time, and at that time, it seemed like he was.
that's pretty cool. Well, we interrupted our last question because I saw a story there that needed to be told, and so I'm glad we got that before we finished up. But not to get either one of you off the hook, who's each one of y'all's favorite Brahmin animal, cow or bull of all time?
So, I will say that probably one of my favorite animals with cow. I'll do cow and bull. One of my favorite cows has to be the 8/9 CT Lady Rhino Ray that started everything for my family. She was probably one of the most consistent cows that I've ever seen in the Brahma breed as far as producing top-notch Brahma cattle, whether they were red or gray. She just was extremely consistent. So she's definitely one of my favorites, and of course she means a lot to my family. As far as bull goes, I know he is young, and I liked him a lot when he was born, but he has been knocking him out the park. But Pole Smoke is probably one of my favorite gray bulls rolling right now today.
Yeah, I would definitely say for Pole Smoke because his progeny are, I guess, speaking for themselves. He's been bred a lot of different ways, and it's been a lot of good calves all over the world off of him.
Well, perfect. Well, those are kind of what I expected, and I didn't know if 8/9 was going to get mentioned or not, but obviously everybody knows the impact that cow's not only made for your family, but just the red Brahmin breed. I don't know how many pedigrees there are that don't have him in there, but I'd say there's probably, or have her in there, there's probably more with 8/9 than not in today's instance that win. But, well, I enjoyed it. I appreciate you guys. I think everybody's going to kind of like listen to this. Everybody enjoys getting to visit with Watch shows, and this is just kind of a good casual conversation with Joe and Lana. And so if there's anything y'all have got left to say, now would be a good time. But if not, just really, really appreciate y'all taking the time to visit with me.
Well, thank you. We really appreciate it. It's an honor for us to be on here.
Yes, thank you very much. This means a lot, and we're super excited, and this was really fun.
Perfect. Well, we'll go ahead and sign out, but thank you both.
You've been listening to the Over the Hump podcast. Our passion is Brahman cattle, and it runs deep. And this show is about its rich history, industry trends, and stories that define the American Brahman. We hope you've enjoyed the show. If you did, make sure to like, rate, review, and subscribe. We'll be back soon. But in the meantime, find us on Instagram and Facebook at BR Cottrell. See you next time on the Over the Hump podcast.